Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited for this episode. Before I introduce our guest, here is a quote just for this episode. This is the lesson. Never give in. Never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense. Sir Winston Churchill. Today's guest
I love it.
is a man of character and good sense and honor. Couldn't think of any better quote than never give in. Raphael Mavi is back, advisor, culture man himself, mentor to those smart enough to understand how important it is for their people to have a voice in their organizations, and an outspoken leader, I would say, in the morass of social media, always sharing his thoughts, his feelings, emotions, and insights. So he's coming back today to enlighten us and to have conversation that maybe even some of us wouldn't. So thanks for coming back. And thank you.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here.
I invited you on this show because I see you, first of all, always sharing something. With this quote was sent to me this morning. Actually, I want to read this. One more quote here. Something that you actually think. So here's what: courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point. C.S. Lewis. So I look at you as a courageous thinker online. Now, whether you agree with that or not, well, I'd like to know if you agree with it or not. But what comes to mind when I share that with you? Do you consider yourself a courageous thinker? And because I see you sharing your thoughts that I may not, or others may not. You've been doing this for years, where you just share who you are online. So I'm curious. Do you consider that courageous or something else?
So to answer your question, at this point, I would consider myself courageous, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It actually started at the curve of the COVID times, and I started reflecting back on everything that I had to go through in my life, including the early years where I had to hide who I was when traveling to other cities because of the persecution, because of anti-Semitism, as far as, where my family and I come from, and when COVID came around, I'm like, why am I supposed to hold back when I see what's going on, when I see the obvious? Right. And I just became very outspoken. I've been outspoken in the entrepreneurial space, but that's something different, that you may or may not get the right audience, but eventually people come around, to get the right mindset, to improve your life, to improve your, to get on the personal development journey, so to speak. And I've seen people over the last 17, 18 years that in the beginning were adamant about personal growth and development. Then they came around because life just happens to them, and they're kind of forced to embrace the journey of personal development. But then, the whole COVID happened, and politics and all the nonsense that started happening. I'm like, I'm not going to hold back. And I've actually, paid the price. I don't have a large account on social, but I've been blacklisted, so to speak, kind of the shadow banning, right? It happened numerous times. I went through like standard 300 to 400 views in stories. All of a sudden I'm barely getting 60 or 70 in my stories. So I've paid the price that in that way. They've taken it off, but I just wouldn't shut up. I've been shadow banned again. It was a continuous struggle, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep doing this until I get a knock on my door, right? Hey, yeah, you think you live in a democracy, but hey, listen, we've seen this crazy, weird things happen. I'm like, I'm going to keep talking until I get a knock on the door, until I get my account shut down. That's basically the price I'm willing to pay at this point. So yeah, I've been outspoken. And recently, we went to a function and somebody was there, somebody I know in real life, offline, And he's like, you know what? He's like, I want to salute you because he's like, in the last 2 years, this was a year ago. He's like, in the last 2 years, you chose to be vocal when a lot of us just wanted to stay quiet.
You're getting
So that
feedback
really meant a
now.
lot.
Yeah. What do you?
Yeah.
Is there a lesson? Is there a lesson in the fact we look at this? You're saying 400 views to 60, and then I'm saying, hey, come on the podcast, and now there's thousands of people. So, like, I'm curious if you think there's a lesson in that. We should all be a bit more courageous because, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, because you went from 400 views to 60, but now I'm one of those 60, and I'm saying, come on the show, and now thousands of people are going to hear you, and that's because you spoke out and you lost a little bit, and now you're getting more. You see what I'm saying? Is there a lesson there that eventually the truth will pay off, or is it something else you would perceive it
Well,
as?
the lesson is definitely obvious, right? Stay your course. Speak the truth, not your truth. That's the biggest misconception. Okay, you speak your truth. I'm like, your truth could be somebody else's lie. So like the truth. There's only one truth. But aside from the obvious lesson of pay the price now and then reap the rewards later, for me, it wasn't even I'm going to reap the rewards later. For me, it was just like, am I going to say what needs to be said to my existing audience that may or may not like what I have to say? Or am I going to say it to connect with like-minded people, even though there's going to be less of them, but at least they're the right individuals or people on the opposite aisle of my paradigm who are actually open to learning new things, right? Who are open to be wrong in their past prior mentality, because that's the way I would learn, right? That's the way I still learn. This is why I pay attention to the opposition, because I want to know, what if my old paradigm is no longer valid? What am I going to take away from this? Is there merit to their message? Right. So the lesson is like, yeah, stay in the truth, right? Because essentially, if you're on social media, if you have a podcast, the goal is not to speak into your audience, right? To existing audience. The goal is to put the message out there that would build the right audience that you actually want to address, right? That's really that's what I had to learn the hard way.
So originally I asked to come on the show to talk about what's happening right now in the world as it relates to, Israel, because I read some posts that you put on about it. What is going on, and what's your take on it? And I'm curious of your take on both sides of the equation, how you're looking on it. And I'm coming from a standpoint of truly having really, I feel I'm very embarrassed about this. Culture matters, right? Like, I haven't read enough books out there. Like, this is my insecurity. I don't really know what's going on, nor have I read enough. And I'm starting to study now more of, it's like my history is definitely weak. So yeah, like, what are your thoughts? Because I had read a post, or I've seen a bunch of posts of you actually calling out specific people and saying what you think about what they did or didn't say, is basically. And I was like, wow, that's
Yeah. And I think I know who you're talking
admirable.
about in this case.
I actually don't remember who it was, but I just recall that you're
Okay.
not holding back, and I really admire that, because I've personally thought. So I've actually asked people on the show before, like, I don't know who it was. You know who it was recently? Brian Bogert came on the show, he coaches and helps people with their awareness and whatnot. And it was a conversation around, like, I was asked, like, should we, you know, debate those we feel are putting ideas in the industry that we disagree with? And because, like, I want to do more of that. And he had his view of it. So I see you as someone that does share your thoughts. That's why I'm asking you, the first questions. So what was that story
So
behind that? Yeah, let's start with that.
So if you're referring to the video that I posted, the long video, like 11-minute video, I called out two individuals. And if you don't mind, I can share their names
Sure.
here. And if it's okay,
Yeah.
you can keep it out.
No,
One of them, is Sean Whalen, and the other one
oh yeah,
was,
he does the sheep stuff.
And I have a lot of respect for this guy. I mean, everything that he's done from an entrepreneurial standpoint, even with this family, and I fully respect his message as a patriot. But there's certain things that there's a fine line between being a patriot and being a nationalist. Very, very fine line. And it's extremely important not to cross that line. And I'm speaking as an immigrant who came to this country thanks to his parents and grandparents
Wow.
because of the opportunity and the protection and the freedom that this country offers, right? So at this point, I do consider myself as a patriot. It's America first. However, I cannot shut my eyes to the rest of the world and pretend nothing else matters, because that is not who I am. That is not in my culture. That is not in my upbringing, right? And the other guy was Ian Smith, who I could lately consider borderline anti-Semite, because of the things that he's been posting. And I'm not afraid to call him out. He's actually here in South Jersey. Yeah, I agree with him on a lot of things. The way he stood up to the radical morons in regards to the closures during COVID and everything. I fully 100% support everything he's been doing. But when it comes to foreign policies, I mean, these two guys don't know shit about foreign policies. And the best way I can explain it, I don't know how many countries they have been to. I have no idea how many locals in those countries, not in America, in those countries they have spoken to. And I don't know how many history books they have read. So when it comes to America first, but everything is about America, you're just very, very foolish, and you're very narrow-minded, because you don't understand what's happening elsewhere, and you don't understand the history of how those countries came about. You don't understand the mentalities, right? And if they choose not to, that's fine. That's their goal, right? That's okay. That's what I'm saying. That kind of thinking is not my thinking, right? So, and the second post was about an influencer out of Canada, I believe she is, great gal, and she posted something to voice her sympathy and empathy for Palestinian children when Israel went to attack. And that's what I basically responded on her own post. I said, listen, I condemn, all acts of violence, especially when it comes to hurting innocent children. I don't care what religion, race, nationality, color. I don't care about anybody. Children are children. That's innocence. You keep your hands off of them. If you got a problem with a country, with a particular group, go after the adults if you want to do something. That's horrible, but don't touch the kids, right? On both sides of the aisle. And I said, why is it that people like yourself, that because you feel closer to your heart, it's because of your religion, you only start to voice your opinion when it's your people that are suffering as a retaliation to what has happened? And she responds to me saying that you can't compare a paper cut to something else. I'm like, you're insinuating that October 7th was a paper cut? Like, have you seen the videos? That's I'm a father of 3 kids, and I shouldn't be saying in public, as a father, God forbid, if that would. I can't even, I don't think I can acknowledge publicly what I would do if I were to go and retaliate. Like, it's a different mindset completely, you know? And unfortunately today, so to answer your question, I'm sorry to go off tangent here, but why do I embrace a debate? Not all debates. Only when I feel the other individual is influencing their followers in the wrong way. Only at that point I would call them out. And again, I'm not one of those people who's going to go and follow just because I don't like their message. I'm not going to go out and shit talk about them, because there's a lot of stuff that I agree with them on, right? But there's certain things that I would call out, and if I'm invited to a debate publicly, by all means, no problem. As a matter of fact, a year and a half ago, I remember doing that, and I actually asked a lot of my contacts on Instagram to tag me and post in their stories to openly debate openly on an IG live with a doctor, pro and cons of the vaccine. Not a single doctor stepped up, and I have a lot of them that follow me, right? So if it's something to be discussed, I'm open to it. When I'm going to tell you that I'm not a historian, I'm not an expert on Israel, Palestine, and never-ending battle, I'm not. The only thing I can share with you is my own personal experience, being a Jew, born and raised in a Muslim republic, which is now its own country. So from my personal experience, what we went through over there, I can share that with you. I can share with you what I've learned by speaking to Israeli Arabs while visiting Israel twice. I can share with you the stories that I'm hearing from Turkish people that had to flee the country. And I've been to Turkey 3 times. The second time I went there, I had to stay there for 3 weeks. None of those 3 times I went there as a tourist. Okay, I went there on business and I had to stay there for business. So my conversations with the locals were very, very extensive everywhere I went. Uber drivers here in New York, I was just in Vegas at a conference. My Uber driver, was a Turkish 26-year-old. He was telling me a story of how he had to escape Turkey to come here because he loved his country, but he hates Erdogan, their president or prime minister, whatever you call him, right? And his friend, 24-year-old, actually had to escape and enter America through the Mexican southern border, right? So why are these people fleeing these countries, these Arab Muslim countries? So that's a question everybody, I think, deserves to ask and deserves a fair answer to, And even to this day, like my kids, myself, we have friends that are Muslim, but they are basically the 75%, 80% of the Muslim population, which are the peaceful. They don't want any of this shit. They're not fanatical extremists, right? Apologies for that. So with my personal experience, like I know based on understanding history and also having friends of that faith, like for centuries, the Muslims and the Jews have lived very, very tight-knit communities. They've been best as of friends, very tight neighbors. And it's always been like this. It hasn't been like this. It hasn't been parallel. It's been like this, intertwined.
Really?
And the reason for that is because there's a lot more commonality between the Muslims and the Jews in regards to their culture and religious aspect, a lot more than the common and with Christians, right? So until the politics got involved, until the extremist mentality, the paradigm penetrated the peaceful Muslims, everything has been like this, intertwined. And then all of a sudden, that 15 to 20, 25% of the extremist fanatical group, they basically got everybody else wound up. And these peaceful Muslims started to pull away, right? And it went like this. And then the Jews are like, what the hell is going on? And this is what started to happen to us in between 1989 and 1991. Started overpowering. First, they started with the Turks. They started cutting them. Like our hospitals were filled. My uncle was a doctor. So he's like, we had no room in the morgues. People are coming in with like limbs missing, women with their pregnant bellies cut open with the fetuses torn out, all by the hand of the Uzbeks, these radicals. And then what happens is when this minority group starts to get aggravated and they blow up, and it goes like this, right? And throughout history, I don't know if it's political, I don't know if it's by design. Like I believe in a lot of things outside of the human potential as well. But throughout history, over the last 3,800 years, every nation that has kicked its Jewish population out started to dwindle down economically. Happened to Spain, happened to Iran, happened to Iraq, happened in Italy, happened in UK, happened in Soviet Union for sure as the most recent one, right? So why is that happening? Like why? So not just that I personally believe, but I've witnessed it firsthand. There's certain groups in each community, not just Muslim, that carry this subliminal, unconscious hate towards Judaism because they cannot debate what's been written in the Old Testament. They hate the fact that it says the chosen people. But the chosen people, we don't see it the way, oh, God chose us better than everybody else. That's not what it meant. Like if you really, really read the book, the reason why it says chosen people is because it means the messenger of God. They're supposed to deliver the good word to everybody else. not because they're better than anybody else. At least that's not my interpretation.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, when I hear, and I don't want to call them radical, but extremely like orthodox religious Jewish groups, right? And when I hear in the conversation that they believe everybody else is beneath them, that's the same kind of turnoff for me as well. So I like to approach every situation logically and with critical thinking, and I hate any side of extreme. Because in the middle, I believe that people do want to live in peace and be kind to each other. I truly believe that. I've seen it. We never, like, growing up, I've been called numerous times as a Jewish kid the equivalent of the N-word to a black person.
Yeah.
Numerous times. And not a single of those times that word was uttered from a Muslim mouth. It was always some Christian kid, right? So when we're talking about anti-Semitism, that came from Christian friends that came over to my house on my birthday. I would walk them out, we would go home, and they would turn around. They would actually call me that, and they didn't mean it sarcastically. And that hate was taught by their parents. So how crazy is that?
Wow.
Right? And you grew up with that. Then you come home. Like I was 7, 8 years old. I would come to my parents. I'm like, what does that mean? So then they would explain to me. And I would go to school. I was bullied for it. I got my ass kicked for it. And every time I stood up after that event, it never happened. And there was another kid. I got bullied. I got beaten up. I stood up, kicked their ass. Never happened again. But it was always nonstop until the age of 12, until I came here.
Wow.
So understanding that, and I'm like, did it help me or did it hurt me? I personally think it helped me. It helped me to be more vocal today and to stand up for what's right.
Wow.
And stand up against what's wrong.
What's been the feedback on those posts?
You will attract people that are aligned with you. You will definitely attract people that disagree with you. But what's interesting is that I actually want to engage people that disagree with me as long as they don't disconnect from you.
Okay.
I admire those that will disagree with you and they will continue to follow you. I have an enormous amount of respect for people like that. That means they still want to hear from you. They want to maybe learn something from you. They just want to keep their eyes on you. I don't know. There's a lot of haters there too, So the engagement has been mixed. My DMs have been very, very interesting lately, but for the most part, it's positive because majority of the people that I'm connected with, they're not Jewish, and they're in support of what's happening with the Jews right now. They're being supportive because, like I said before, essentially nobody likes hate. Nobody wants to see innocent children dying or hurt. Obviously, I don't think so, right? Unless you are at this point Hamas or Hezbollah or any of these, crazy radical organizations, right? That vows to actually wipe the Israel from the face of the earth. Like, how do you tell me you want to free Palestine, but at the same time you're telling me that you want to get rid of Israel? There are 22 Arab states, and there are over 50 Islamic states in the world today. So close to 80, actually, right? Out of all of those nations, and there's only one little tiny speck of land that everybody's trying to fight for. I live in Jersey. That place is literally less in size than Jersey, smaller. Why? Why can't Egypt, why can't Lebanon, why can't Jordanians, why can't whoever, why can't they take the Palestine? Why can't they help them? Why weren't they helping them all these years, for the past 70 years? Why didn't they? And whatever the amount of money that goes to, this is documented proof. This is not my opinion. This is proof. Whatever amount of money that goes to Palestine in support of Palestine, where does it go? Documented. Over 90% goes to Hamas leaders. Where are they today? They live in Qatar. What happened to the BLM supporters? All the money that was donated to BLM because of, from the words standpoint, Black Lives Matter definitely made sense. But as an organization, they're a bunch of scammers. What happened? Majority of the money went to the guys that are at the top. They started buying their mansions, right? And a year and a half ago, my friend and I, we witnessed the same shit. We started raising funds to send to Ukraine because of the children, right? The displaced children in the hospitals. And my close friends, his best friend that he grew up with in Ukraine is still in Ukraine. He's a doctor there. So we raised close to $170,000 in the first 5 weeks. Wow. Packed a lot of containers into a plane and sent it to Ukraine. Guess how much of it reached the hospital?
20%.
Zero.
Zero.
Zero. Zero. Okay. They got robbed. They got robbed. People at the top, government, military, whatever, they took it all. So I'm like, wait, you're crying to the world, you need help, but in the meantime, whatever help you're receiving, you're not actually getting it to the people that need it most. So the second shipment, the second run, my friend actually ended up getting on a plane to make sure everything gets delivered to the hospital. Yeah. So when all of these organizations are crying for help and they receive the help, but people at the top are to blame. Why didn't Hamas allow their own citizens to flee the country? There were caravans. There's proof. There's like aerial footage of this. And they were blocking the roads, using innocents as shields, only so because in their mindset, that person would die as a martyr, so we can parade it in front of Al Jazeera and all the cameras saying Israelis are killing the innocent. Is it really the truth? It's skewed. And that's the world we live in, unfortunately. And thanks to social media, it's just everything's blown out of proportion on both sides.
Did Sean or Ian respond to you?
No. Neither did Najwa. Nobody.
What do you say to that?
Am I looking for their...
So they didn't respond?
No, nobody has responded. Nobody's responded.
Have you ever done those? Or go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead. Go with your question.
Have you ever done, or those reaction videos where you watch someone talking, like an influencer, and then you respond to what they're saying? Have you ever done any of that before?
As a reaction, no. I just did a couple of remixes that the Instagram function allows you to make. You basically it's a parallel footage of what's going on and then just your responses. But as a reaction,
it's like the reaction. I think that's what it is, what you're describing.
Yeah.
Like you have one side, it's the person's video, and then you're responding to it. You have done that or haven't?
Yeah, I haven't done those.
Any reason why, or
just haven't crossed my mind? I don't mind doing that at all, actually.
I just think you would be huge in it because you have thoughts. I'd love to.
That's something to entertain for me, yeah.
Because the team had me do a couple of them, and it was a lot of fun. I want to get more out there, but I think that would be something that you would crush.
I'm definitely going to entertain that. I like that idea.
Yeah, it's like you take
again, you have to understand that I'm not doing any of that to get under anybody else's skin, not to piss anybody off. It's just that if I see something and it smells like shit, I'm gonna call it out. That's all. And I'm nobody in regards to the influence. I don't have that much of a following in comparison to these guys, right? But I look at social media as an archive. Like, God forbid something happens to me sooner than I anticipate. Like, this is something that my children can actually go back and watch and also learn. It's an archive.
You just brought something to my thought is I don't need a following to have power. And you have power without one. And you do have a following. I follow you. Following of one.
I'm talking about like hundreds of thousands of people, right?
But think about how sad it is.
Right now, I cherish a lot. These are majority of them are people that are more or less on the same wavelength, even if they on the opposite side of, let's say, politics, right, or religion, whatever the case is. They're also critical thinkers, and that's what I admire in people. We don't have to agree on everything, but the fact that you and I both can question certain things, we'll get along just fine. As long as we don't hate each other and we understand each other's, we don't have to agree, right? We'll get along. That's the way I look at it.
I think there's something important to what you're up to and who you are. I think it's part of you know, it's important because I I don't think we need, like, the fewer followers that I have, like people that really have my back, um, the more my the more I'm tested by my convictions in a sense. It's like it's you standing there just as a little ant and the empire looking back at you, all the fans. It's like, because all those fans, right, that are following that person, that really has nothing to do with the truth, because the truth is like the idea, right? Or it's like whatever the truth is doesn't have anything to do with how many people are standing behind me if we're in a debate, you know? So I think there's something
I
very,
agree.
very powerful, very courageous, very important lesson in that you standing your ground for what you believe. And that's why I wanted to have you on today to talk about this, because I hope my power never comes from the amount of people that follow me or anything outside of what I think about whatever I think. And there is an influence there, right? Power can corrupt, celebrity corrupts, like it changes. But I just think there's something there. It's like, I don't know. I'm curious if you have any thought. What do you have any thoughts on that?
The powers that be are really out to get us today.
Yeah, in closing, what are your thoughts on the idea of just the one against the many?
It's the story of David and Goliath. The many could represent the Goliath, right? It doesn't have to be one individual that you're fighting. But as long as you are standing up for what's right, you're standing up for ethics, for morality, for progress against tyranny, then I don't mind one against many at all.